Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Welcome back to the LytesOut Podcast. My name is Mike Davis. Along with me, as always, Miguel Iturrate. Miguel, we are joined by Jamie Varner. Jamie, appreciate you being here, brother.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So, Jamie, let's talk about your pedigree, because when you came into mixed martial arts, it was usually everybody was kind of a one-trick pony, and that one trick got them so far. But you came in with both wrestling and boxing. Like, you had more tools than most.
Yeah, that was like I was kind of a part of that first wave of guys that could do multiple things. I would say like Jens Pulver was probably like the first, like the original that could wrestle at Division I wrestling. I think he wrestled in junior college and he went to Boise State after that. And then he was obviously a great boxer as well. He was actually one of the guys I really looked up to growing up, because he was that little guy that people counted out. And then when he beat BJ Penn, it was really cool. And he was a wrestler boxer. But yeah, man, I was kind of a part of that initial wave, and I was really lucky. The university that I wrestled at, I did junior college first, because I was just an idiot. I had a 2.0 GPA in high school, so I only went to school to play sports. So C's got degrees. I thought, like everybody else, you see these football players on national TV, they can barely speak. So I'm thinking, like, dude, I'm definitely going to college if you're a good enough athlete, but that's only for like basketball and football that they make those kinds of exceptions for. But for wrestling, unfortunately, I didn't have any scholarships, and I had to walk onto a junior college. But after that, I ended up becoming a JUCO All-American. I took second in nationals my sophomore year, and then I got a full ride to Lock Haven University of Pennsylvania. And University.
What about high school? How did you do in high school?
High school, I was a state runner-up in wrestling.
Okay.
I was actually more of a swimmer in high school, dude. I was a 4-time state placer, 4-time state qualifier for swimming. I was a 100 backstroker. That was my main. I would swim the 200 IM as well, but I was the 50 back in the relay, the 100 backstroker. I took 8th in state my senior year. Like I had scholarship for swimming. I was going to go to University of Evansville in Indiana, but my 2.0 GPA caused me to lose that scholarship opportunity. So that's why I had to walk on to a junior college for wrestling. Yeah, wrestling was only to get myself stronger for swimming, to be honest with you.
Really?
Have you ever been to Evansville?
I have not. I've heard that it's a small town, but I heard it's not bad.
Okay, I've done a bunch of shows there. It's okay. You probably did better where in Arizona.
Yeah, no matter where you went, it's probably better.
Yeah, I heard the air quality is pretty bad. Isn't there like coal mines or something like that around there?
Yeah, it's a blue collar town on the border with Kentucky. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I've never been there, but Lock Haven had a wrestling team and a boxing team. So I think that's kind of where my skills really grew. During my senior year, like right before my senior year in high school, I started training MMA. I met with a guy that like was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's running classes at this gym about 2 miles from my house. And then once a week, he would have a Muay Thai guy come in on Saturdays and do like a 2-hour class. And there'll only be like 2 or 3 of us in there. So I was getting like essentially one-on-one Muay Thai training and boxing training while I was in high school. So I kind of had a little bit of knowledge of striking. But it was when I got to Lock Haven that I really refined my skills. And I actually became a national champ in boxing at Lock Haven. So it was awesome.
Is that in PA?
Yeah, central Pennsylvania, just outside Williamsport.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, your hands were no joke, and it seemed as if like you came from a wrestling boxing background, but it's kind of surprising that you took to it so quick. Truth be told. But how about your first fight, March 27, 2003? Roland Sarria is the promoter. You fight Carlos Ortega out of Brasa Academy. Did you know that how important MMA would be in your life at this point?
No, dude. I was a senior in high school. I was in high school during that time. I had about 500 kids because I remember my sophomore year of high school, the toughest guy in school that everybody thought was the toughest guy in school, he was supposed to fight in Rage in the Cage. And he backed out last minute because he got scared. He's like, oh man, these guys are real fighters. Like, so he backed out. And I remember hearing him say this. I'm like, dude, it's like a wrestling match where you get to punch people. And there's been so many times I wanted to punch guys on the mat. I'm like, I'm going to do that someday just to say I did it, because what these people thought was the toughest guy in school. And I saw that he was a coward and like didn't do it. I'm like, I'll do that. So I had already had it in my mind that I was going to fight someday. I told my parents, I told like my coworkers, I was a lifeguard during the summer. I'm like, I'm fighting. No one believed me, but I got an opportunity. And I was trained as right after wrestling my senior year. I had just taken second. I went right into wrestling, right back into MMA training. And in March, I had that first fight. I think he was like 4-2.
Dude, he had a KO win over Kyle Breeze.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I was a 18-year-old that didn't have a goatee that could connect, barely had the hair under my armpits. And I went in there and fucked him up. Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this, but I was a little kid, and he was a pro. I was an amateur, obviously. Pros back then could fight amateurs. They just had to fight amateur rules, which was no closed fist on the ground. So you're just slapping the hell out of somebody on the mat. But yeah, man, it was really crazy. 500 kids from my school were there. So like the last 3 months of high school, I was the absolute king. It was great.
So, I mean, you're an 18-year-old kid. You're a senior in high school. The promoter, Roland Sarria, I'm sure treated you really well.
No, man. No, the promoters, like, Roland's a nice guy, but I mean, he's like candy covered poison, man. You know, like, nice guy up front, but he's in it for himself. And like, that's kind of promoters in general, especially back then. Like I said, I brought in like 500 people, and never once was there anything about like giving me money or whatever. That even when I went pro, they offered me like $100. Like, knowing like the type of pull that I had and the type of draw that I had, they offered me like $100 for my first pro fight, $200 for my first pro fight.
Let's talk about the type of pull, because Roland absolutely, when he sees an opportunity, he jumps in on it. He has you fight like 2.5 weeks later on April 12, 2003 against Jesse Moreng.
Mm-hmm. Jesse that was a really tough fight. Jesse was a former Division I wrestler. He was a couple of years older than me.
Think about that. You're a senior in high school when he throws you up against a D1 wrestler.
I said yes to the fight, man. My goals shifted. Like, so my first goal was just to fight in the cage, just to say that I fought and did it. But then after having that success, I'm like, all right, my next goal was like, I want to go pro, just to say I'm a professional athlete. So that was my next goal, was to go pro. And in an effort to do that, you have to fight, whoever. And there wasn't a ton of opportunities out there back in the day. Like, me being a wrestler and a good wrestler, no one like really wanted to fight good wrestlers back in the day because of, the thought like it'd be boring. They're going to get held down. They can't really, capitalize on their striking or whatever. So it was actually kind of hard for me to find fights. Jesse was a guy that we were about the same size. Obviously, he was a lot older than me, or, a little bit older than me, had wrestling, but I wasn't scared. Like, I took the fight. I ended up losing the decision. And within 3 years, I was whooping that dude. Like, within 3 years, we became really good friends. We became training partners, and like the tables completely shifted. It went from like, he beat me like 3 years ago to where like he was my training partner, and like they were having to bring multiple guys to try to wear me out. So, but that was it. Like, that loss motivated me so much. I trained so much harder. I don't think I lost again until the Hermes Franca fight.
Now, what was it like going back into school after a loss like that, senior year?
I did something that no one in our high school has ever done. And, the way I lost, it wasn't like I got my butt kicked or anything. The guy, he was just a better wrestler than me. He took me down. I was better on the feet. He took me down, I think, a couple times. I may have got him down once. It was just a glorified wrestling match, but he out wrestled me. And Jesse's tough, dude. He fought in the WC at 135 pounds, and he was working a full-time job. He was a husband, a father, working a full-time job, and then fighting at an elite level. Like, he's actually my hero. I love that guy.
Jesse obviously is at Arizona Combat Sports. Roland keeps you going again, doesn't give you any real break in between. He gets you against Justin Nauling, where you show off some jiu-jitsu skill. Where were you training at exactly at this point?
So I was training under a guy named Steve Hockley. Okay. He was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. He had some MMA fights. And then I had a couple kickboxers that were like lived in the local area that would help me out. But I was essentially just training out of a karate gym. This guy would rent mat space out of a karate gym, and there would be about 8 to 10 of us that would go in every night and do jiu-jitsu or do MMA training or do kickboxing or whatever. So I was training under him. The Justin Nauling fight was actually a really good fight. I'm actually friends with Justin on Facebook. We were supposed to connect a couple of weeks ago, actually, when he was out here. I just was traveling for work, but he was a Marine. He's like 6'2", 6'3", Marine, badass, decorated, kickboxer, wore the badass kickboxer, Muay Thai shorts. The crowd was definitely on his side, obviously being a patriot and a veteran and all that type of stuff. I had immense respect for him, but I was also scared, man. He was bigger than me, like a lot bigger than me. I think he outweighed me by like 10 or 15 pounds. He was a lot taller than me. I never fought anybody that tall. Nowhere have I fought in like a grown ass man. He was a grown ass man. Like at least Carlos Ortega, like, he was like shorter than me. Like he was a man, but he was shorter than me. He wasn't like a real imposing looking figure. Like wasn't super jacked. He was in good shape. I mean, he was a fighter. He had a winning record. He beat Kyle Breeze, right? Like Kyle Breeze was no chump back then. But Justin Nauling I was actually nervous about that one. I was a little scared. I think he knocked somebody out or beat the hell out of somebody right before. So I knew who he was. But yeah, man, the game plan was like, you don't fight a shark in the ocean. You pull that motherfucker up onto the beach and you make that shark fight you on the beach. And so I took his ass down and he gave me one of those long ass arms, and that was a wrap.
Yeah. Roland has done so many events in Arizona, and the guys that we've talked to, we had Drew Fickett on, Seth Baksinski, Joe Riggs as well.
Love those guys.
All of them have classic Roland stories.
Oh God, I can't tell you guys stories because the things that I know of him, I don't want them to be. They'd be pretty damning if I tell you some of the stories. So the things I can say is Roland likes to party. And he partied at all times. Didn't matter if he was working or not working. Roland liked to party, and he gave me an opportunity. And I think BJ Penn says it best. The MMA or MMA UFC. He said his quote was like, the UFC is just an opportunity. I'll take it one step further. I think MMA is an opportunity. I think every promoter, every promotion that you fight on is an opportunity, and he gave me an opportunity, man. And so I'm really grateful for him. Like, people can talk shit, say what they want. I underpaid, whatever. Like, he gave us all an opportunity. All those guys that you mentioned, without Roland Sarria, their pathway to the UFC would have been a lot longer. So I'm grateful for him.
That's a good take, and I appreciate that in terms of like positivity and stuff like that. So let's not blame Roland. You're an 18-year-old kid. You've got some promise. You've got some talent. There's got to be somebody who offered you management or what was going on that end, because at this point, if you had 500 people there, 10% of the ticket sales, even something like that for a kid, a couple $100, why did Roland not even, have somebody asking him for that stuff?
Well, I guess that's more so on me. I was young. I was 18. I didn't really know business, right? I was a pure competitor. I think that time during my life, I treated it like high school wrestling, because that's all I knew. I didn't get paid to win wrestling matches. I took second in state. Nothing came from that. So I think my mindset was just win fights, become a pro. I don't know. Then I didn't really have any thoughts after that. So it wasn't really in my mind. I never had a manager. I was just competing for the heck of it. And it ended up being after my freshman year in college, MMA ended up being just a cross training outlet for me to stay in shape and get in shape for my next wrestling season. You know, when you're in a wrestling room all the time, like you do get sick of it. Too much of a good thing can still be too much. So being able to pull myself out of that wrestling room, being in like a different surrounding, but I'm still wrestling, I'm still doing grappling, I'm still doing a lot of stuff, and I'm also staying in shape, but it's just taking me out of the actual wrestling room. So I used MMA for cross training. Never did I think that it was going to turn into the career that it ended up turning into. And I didn't get a manager until right before my UFC fight. Like I didn't have anybody. Drew Fickett was one of my training partners in Tucson, Arizona, where I went to Pima College. So a lot of the fights, like some of the fights that he would get, he would bring me out with him as his corner man. And a lot of times he was able to get me fights as well. And so, I mean, he was kind of like a pseudo manager training partner. I would just be his tag along, and I would get fights. And that's like one of my fights. My first fight in Canada was because of that. I was out there, I was going to corner Drew, and they had a guy pull out, and they're like, "Hey, how much do you weigh?" And I'm like, I don't know, 168 pounds, 170 pounds. They're like, "Hey, will you fight that guy over there?" And I looked at him, and he didn't look like, I mean, they're like, he's like 175. Will you fight him? I'm like, or they're like, "No, will you fight him for $800? I look over at him like, "Yes." I'm like, yeah.
So let me set the table on this. So that is actually World Freestyle Fighting, May 14, 2004. It's in British Columbia. Drew was fighting Fabiano Holanda, who is obviously George St. Pierre's jiu-jitsu coach, and you get Garrett Davis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was the day before. I had to wear this is a great story. So I'm going there. I'm only there to be his cornerman and training partner. So I brought like just an extra change of clothes, right? Pads, tie pads. No, I didn't bring any gear for myself.
No.
So I get there, they tell me this shit. I have to wear Drew's cup. I have to wear Drew's shorts. I had to wear fucking Drew's mouthpiece. How fucking gross is that? So I went first because I was early on the card. So I got to soil the cup. I got to soil the shorts. And I wore a mouthpiece that didn't fit my mouth. And I had to take all that stuff off, give it to him. Luckily, the fight didn't last that long, but nevertheless, it was still sweaty. So he had to put on my jock strap, my fight shorts that were sweaty, and then the mouthpiece, I was covered in my spit.
I bet you're glad you're on the undercard. I mean, if you went after him.
So
it was, go ahead.
So with that fight, Drew, if you listen to this podcast, we obviously have told a million Drew stories. Drew's out of his friggin' mind at this time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you remember picking up Drew over your shoulders after his win against Fabiano Holanda?
No, not a chance. No.
I thought you were picking up, yelling around, carrying around the ring, yelling, "Fuck jiu-jitsu."
Maybe. I don't know. I was a monster back then. Drew, I was literally Drew's like twin. I wanted to be like Drew so bad.
It's scary.
I know, but I didn't know any better because he was some of the things that people don't know about Drew, he is the best training partner and he is a hard worker. When that guy isn't drinking, he is so goddamn dialed in. And I like Roland Sarria, Drew Fickett are probably the most influential people in my life that got me where I was. Without Drew kicking my ass every day, he came into the Pima College wrestling room because the head coach at Pima was Joe Solorio. But Joe Solorio was also Drew Fickett's high school wrestling coach when Drew won state at South Point. So they had a great connection. So Drew would come in and wrestle with us. And that's like when Drew found out that I was that I did MMA, we started training together. And I just was attached to his hip, man. I worked out with him 2-3 times a day. He would take me on all these trips and he taught me how to work, man. He taught me how to be a fighter. And I'm so grateful for that monster. But yeah, he's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, we love him. We love him. In fact, did you get suspended by the Athletic Commission for a few months? July 19, 2003, after celebrating your fight? Yeah.
I think I said, they're like, what do you what do you like? What's your path to victory, or what's the reason for your success? I'm like, eat the pussy. Walk away.
That's Fickett. That's Fickett. Yeah.
That was 100% Fickett. Like I said, I wasn't even my own person back then. I idolized him. I idolized him because he was a monster, dude. Like, he went out and beat Georges St. Pierre's jiu-jitsu coach doing jiu-jitsu. He out jiu-jitsu the jiu-jitsu guy. Like, yeah. He was just, I mean, he beat Josh Neer. He beat Koscheck. Like, he was a good
dude. He beat
dude.
Koscheck. Think about that.
Yes. He got in his own way. That was it. He just got in his own way. But he was such a good training partner and mentor when it came to training. But everything else, he was an idiot.
Yeah, and the thing about it, too, is like you mentioned, like, he liked to drink and stuff. I mean, that's the big bugaboo, right? But it never prevented him from working because he's a hard worker. Everybody says the same thing, and he was always on it. 60, 70 professional fights, too. You know what I mean? It's like crazy. And he doesn't get the respect he deserves.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And when I ended up, I'm sure we're going to get into this later, but when I ended up fighting him later in my career, like, it was the fight, I think, that got me back into the UFC. Yes. I cried, man. It was, I'm getting emotional thinking about it right now, dude. It was sad. It was sad because I loved him. And
he was his own worst enemy at that time. He's sober now, but at that time, he was like homeless, I want to say.
He was in a bad way, dude, and I had to separate myself from him. I was supposed to corner him for his Kenny Florian fight. Dude, I am getting emotional. I was supposed to corner him for his Kenny Florian fight, and I had to pull out. I couldn't go out there and corner him. I forget what had something came up, and I had to bail on him, and that really put that like kind of ended our friendship because I let him down, and I still don't forgive myself for doing that. He had my back, and because of him is the reason why I had my success. And when I fought him that night, I apologized to him for that. And that was something that I should have probably done 12 years prior. But yeah, man, that was a sad night fighting him because he was just a shadow of the man he used to be. And it's just sad, man. He was so fucking talented. God, he was so talented. I love that man. He was a good dude.
He had a technique of always being able to get somebody's back. No matter who you were, he got your back.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult, how long did it take you to kind of figure out that trick of his in practice?
Dude, I couldn't, man. Like, he was so good.
Come on.
When I was training with him, if he got my back, I was usually effed. Usually, man. The whole thing was don't get there with Drew. I would have to get the tape, and Drew was bigger than me. He more like, I think he's like 4 or 5 years older than me. So he had more of a man body. I was still kind of growing into becoming a man. And he was he would definitely big brother me. But dude, there were multiple times he would get my back and then just like, he wouldn't even have the rear naked. He would have it over my jaw. And I feel like he was going to break my jaw. And I would get so goddamn pissed because I'd have to just like a jog.
Wow. You had an early fight in your career, which I thought for sure was kind of a make or break it. Like, we're going to see what Jamie Varner is made out of. And that was the James Upshur fight. James at the time was 6-1. And, you're kind of on a roll right now. What happened in that bout? I know it was a no contest. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, it was. So he went. So it was like it was either like going to be a double disqualification or a no contest. So those options. He was going for. I was punching him in the face. I may have even thrown a couple elbows, and we're not allowed to throw elbows. I was kind of like chins where like you like the. And yeah, it was like I was hitting him illegally. He was going for an illegal heel hook. The ref stopped the fight. No contest. I wanted that fight again. Obviously, that never happened. There's a reason why I went for the heel hook. Sorry.
Yeah, you trained with a fighter named Adlan Amagov.
Adlan.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. That dude at AMA in New Jersey. Yeah, he was a Strikeforce badass, right?
He was a Strikeforce badass. I think he stabbed a guy to death in Russia, but he was like the first wave of like the Russian invasion in regards to like their high-end wrestlers.
Yeah. Have you guys talked to Adlan at all, or talked to anybody about me and Adlan sparring sessions?
I've heard they're legendary, which is why we're bringing it up.
Okay. Yeah. No one wanted to spar that motherfucker. No one wanted him. Dude, I'm actually going to talk some shit. Those AMA guys were fucking pussies. Jim Miller, Dan Miller, whoever that, they had another 205 pounder there. They wouldn't Jim Miller never sparred me. We grappled one time. I knee barred him. Never grappled with me again. Never sparred with me. I sparred Dan a bunch, fucked him up. They had a 205 pounder there that was also in the UFC, fucked him up. But none of those guys wanted to go with Adlan, because Adlan would throw spinning kicks, and Adlan he was a tough ass Russian. He had sambo, he would do judo trips and throws, but I was a dog, dude. I didn't care. I was a dog. Especially at that time, I was kind of in no man's land. I gotten cut from the WEC. They didn't bring me over to the UFC. I was kind of trying to refigure myself out. I thought about I got back into school. I went back to college because I dropped out of college my senior year to fight in the UFC. So I got into Seton Hall medical program. They had a 3-year program to become a physician assistant. So I had all my prereqs done, and it was a 3-year program to become a physician assistant. Like, you get your bachelor's in biology, and then you would get your PA degree. And so I was out there for that. So I did a semester at Seton Hall, and I was training at AMA. And yeah, like, no one wanted to spar Adlan, or if the guys that would, they would run from him and shit. And I just bit down my mouthpiece, kept my hands up, and I went after that motherfucker. And I don't know how many rounds I won. He beat me up pretty good, but he definitely remembered. He knew who I was, and he was 2 weight classes above me.
There's actually comments on YouTube about your sparring sessions. That's how I got that question.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate? I haven't seen or heard any of that stuff.
There's no video on it, but when obviously the questions I'm asking, I'm not from your area. They're kind of intense, like in terms of regional. So the comments on YouTube were like, him and Adlan, holy shit. And then people are still going, yeah, Adlan's in prison now because he stabbed some dude to death and blah, 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 blah. So, he was just a Russian gangster, man. Like, and he was legit.
Dude, yeah. But he liked me, man. I earned his respect. And that was, I don't know. I can't say anything. Russia's a different place, man. I don't know what he's going on, but I'd love to see that guy again, because we were absolute brothers in arms in that gym, man. We could depend on only each other. We knew that when we sparred, that it was going to be an absolute war. It was not going to be easy for him. And obviously I knew it wasn't going to be easy for me, but yeah, man, they were epic battles. And I would go with him multiple rounds in a row. Like, cause again, nobody wanted to go with him. And I'd sparred Brian McLaughlin a couple of times, but like, it seemed like every time I hit him, dude, that guy would just drop. So I really didn't have very many sparring partners there. So he was just the man. He made me so much better, so much tougher. Cause I got to see like spinning shit, which ended up helping me out. A year and a half later, when I fight Edson Barbosa, I had Adlan throwing spinning shit at me all the time. So I learned to kind of circle away from that, set up my right hand off of kicks and stuff, or close the distance when they look to spin. So Adlan actually played like a pivotal role in my life. It just didn't like come into fruition until that fight with Edson.
Well, let's talk about Barbosa. He was a monster favorite in that bout.
Go ahead.
Barbosa was a monster favorite in that bout. You finished him.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought my guy over here was going to ask a question. Yeah, man. Yeah, he was. Dude, he just kicked Terry Edam's head off the fight before. He just came off a knockout of the year. I forget who he was supposed to fight.
He's been with you. He still might be with them. So yeah, that's a great one. I was going to ask you a little bit of a different question. So you went from being a little bit of a 2.0 grade point average guy to like Seton Hall Medical Program. How that trip went? Like, what's going on in your life there? Like, how did you do that? Like, I mean, with respect.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it just comes down to discipline. And I didn't have discipline in the classroom. I was actually gifted, like as far as just being like kind of naturally smart, and I could listen to the lectures, and I could always do enough to just pass. I just didn't do homework. I woke up every morning like 5 a.m. and during swim season, I go to swim practice at 5 a.m. before school. Then like my school would start at 7:40, so I go to swim practice for an hour and a half, shower, change, go to school. Then after school, I would go to another swim practice, and then I would go to like a club wrestling practice, or I'd go to my jiu-jitsu practice or whatever. So I just trained. I was training 2-3 times a day. And so there wasn't really a lot of time to do homework. And also I think that in college, I got to like study and pick I got to study the subjects I wanted to study, but I also got to pick the teachers and my professors. And it's sad that the education system is what it is, but I had a lot of teachers that shit on me growing up. I had one, I had a junior, was she creative writing or literature or something? I had a teacher tell me that I would never amount to anything, that I was going to be a construction worker, because I was spitting in a cup before a wrestling match because I had to lose 1.5 pounds. Because I was spitting in a cup in the wrestling room or in her classroom, I was going to be a loser, never amount to anything. So I just had a lot of teachers that didn't really believe in me. And I'm one of those guys, I feed off of positive reinforcement. So a lot of times I just did enough to get by, but I had great teachers that loved me, that believed in me, that supported me. And I would get A's in their classes because I cared. I cared about how they felt about me. So I would work harder for them. When I got to college, I took that same kind of work ethic and discipline that made me successful in wrestling in such a short time. I didn't start wrestling until my freshman year of high school, which guys that go Division I usually start like 6 years old, 8 years old. I started at 15. So wow. I think that, a combination of athleticism, just being gifted athletically, but then also the work ethic is what made me successful in wrestling. But I just taken that same type of work ethic. Okay, if I can text or go do this or go grab coffee or play Halo with my friends for a couple hours, I can put 2 hours into homework. And that was just it, man. I did my assignments. I would invest a couple hours a day into homework, and I had a 3.6 GPA when I graduated.
Good for you.
That's insane.
So, yeah, thank you. I think I graduated cum laude, which is like, I don't think my uncle, but like no one in my immediate family. So like my brothers, sisters, no one else graduated college. But like I have an aunt and uncle that graduated like summa cum laude and cum laude. So I'm one of like 3 people in my family that actually graduated college, but also graduated with honors.
Wow.
That's cool. That's definitely cool, because there are a lot of, and you've seen that, like you didn't take a lot of people who don't go to college right away or takes a break or whatever, you don't get back to your education as fast either. So congratulations to you, because you took care of your business while on the rise on your MMA career. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So you're 5-1-1 going into the Kyle Sprouse fight, June 12th, 2004. Were you thinking UFC at this point?
No. I was supposed to fight Melvin Guillard that fight. Melvin got hurt and he couldn't fight me. So, and when the Melvin fight was supposed to be at 160 pounds. So they had a day before opponent change, and I fought Kyle Sprouse at 170. I think he weighed in at 175. I don't think he can make 170. But yeah, I had no idea, dude. I was still in kind of like college, like wrestling mode, man. I wasn't thinking like go to the UFC. I was just like, let's compete, let's make some money. Like that fighting was my summer job. I didn't have to, like, I was a lifeguard my sophomore, junior, senior year, sophomore, junior, senior year of high school. In between my senior year and freshman year of college, I was a lifeguard. And I think we were making like $10-11 an hour back then, but back then that was good money.
Yeah.
And you're working 40 hours a week. So you're making decent money for a college kid. And I stopped lifeguarding to to fight, because I was able to make $4 or $5 grand in the summer doing these fights, and that's about how much I would make lifeguarding. And yet I was like essentially getting paid to train. So it was a really good situation for me. And I like, just to kind of get back to your question with the Kyle Sprouse fight, I wasn't thinking UFC. I was just like, all right, this is another competition. I got to win. And I was still thinking getting ready for college the next year. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't thinking fighting the UFC.
Well, how disciplined are you outside of the ring at this point? You're a lifeguard, you're on the beach. Are you drinking, smoking, or are you living a real clean lifestyle and rolling into the fight, or you're just doing what you're doing and fighting?
Another great question. I didn't smoke weed for the first time until I was 31 years old. So I was like, I was anti-drug for a very long time. The only reason why I even tried weed for the first time was because of all my concussions, which I'm sure we can get into later. But Dr. David Blair is the one that actually kind of told me about weed and CBD and the cognitive effects and the effects that can have as far as neurologically. And so I was suffering from some concussion issues. So that's why I was like willing to try anything. And I started smoking weed. Now, like, I have a medical card now. So like, I'm definitely a proponent of marijuana use. I don't drink. I will every once in a while, like, have a beer with a friend or whatever, but I don't have alcohol in my house. I don't get drunk. I go months without even having a beer. Like I said, it's very, very like selective when I do. But back then, I would drink with Drew. I just wouldn't drink before those fights. I wouldn't drink 2 weeks before a fight. That was like kind of my thing. And then when I got into the UFC, I wouldn't drink 6 weeks before a fight. And then when I won my world title, I wouldn't drink 12 weeks before a fight. So that was kind of like my thing. But I never smoked. I've never tried cocaine. I got slipped Molly one time in Vegas, and that was a great time. Wow. That was a great time. I did not appreciate like it happening, but it was a lot of fun. But those are like just weed, and I've tried, and like I said, I got slipped Molly. One of my buddies, he actually passed away, but he was the one that put in my drink after I won one of my fights, and we had a great time.
Did you ever microdose?
Mushrooms, yeah. Actually, that's a great question. I recently started doing that. So excellent. I will do a quarter of a gram every other day. And the things that I've noticed with it, I'm more loving, I'm more caring, I'm more empathetic. It calms me down. As far as like I'm still a fighter, right? So I think a lot of us fighters kind of have that fight or flight mode, and it's very quick for us to kind of snap into that. And it acts as a real buffer for me to be able to process shit before acting. So I love it. I think microdosing is great. I think I've done DMT, and that was a really amazing experience. I did a DMT like vape pen, and one of the most beautiful things about that experience is just leaving that. I'm like, there's more to life than just this. Like there is something more out there. And that it was really beautiful. Like that experience is really beautiful. And I'm looking to do more stuff like that. I know ayahuasca, there's like this 5 DMT, HT DMT stuff. It's like DMT on steroids. So I'm really interested in a lot of that as well.
Cool, but now let's take it back to the Drew Fickett days, because like if you drank with Drew, because if you drank with Drew, Drew's not, Drew's the kind of guy that I forgot. I think it was Carlo Prater that roommated with him, and Carlo they went out shopping. They bought a case of beer. Carlo went for a 2-hour training session, came back, and there was no case of beer.
Yeah, Drew was
a pro.
He was 100%. Drew was all or nothing at everything he did. When it was training, he was training like a motherfucker. When he was, with the girl, oh my God, he was going after. Like it didn't matter. Like everything, he was 100%. If he would like see a girl at the bar, he would just run over there and like get after it. So like, and with drinking, it was the same way. Like I got a cool little story. I was living with my grandparents. Or with my grandfather. My grandmother had passed away probably about 8 years prior maybe 10 years prior to me going to college in Tucson, and that's where Drew lived at the time. And I lived with my papu. I'm half Greek, and my Greek grandfather, he let me live with him. So I got to live in his house for free. And typical Greeks, they drink, they eat. Like, he was awesome. He cooked dinner for me every night. But he liked rum and cokes, and my grandfather was a very high functioning alcoholic. He drank. That was like kind of his thing. He would have a drink with dinner. He'd have a drink with this, have a drink with that. So it was like a Friday night, and Drew and his girlfriend were coming to pick me up to go out. We're gonna go hit the town. I think it was a week after the WFF fight. So we had both won. We both had some money, and we didn't have any fights coming up. So we decided to go out and party. And he came over to my grandfather's house, and my grandfather and his girlfriend were having some drinks. And so I wanted to introduce Drew and his girlfriend to my grandfather and his girlfriend. And so my grandfather ends up asking, hey, you guys want to have a drink? Well, one drink turned into a whole bottle of rum, a whole bottle of so a handle of rum and a bottle of vodka. So we were doing rum and cokes, and what are the drinks called with grapefruit juice and vodka?
Greyhound.
What's that called? Greyhound. So it was rum and cokes and Greyhounds, and I blacked out. I don't remember leaving my grandparents' house, but I went to a party. I ended up puking all over the party, and they put me in a car. But Drew managed to party all night and still drop me off at home. So yeah, dude, we got hammered with my grandparents, who were like 70 something at the time.
There's no stopping Drew. We appreciate him deeply, and like I said, he's underrated. Mike, take over.
Okay, so Kyle Sprouse win with a choke. Kyle Bradley rear naked choke. Right now, and then you walk into the WFF fight in Canada. Jesse Water, Bongfeldt, you knock him out in 4-12. And you're still not.
Didn't he find the UFC?
Huh?
Yeah. Didn't he find the UFC, Bongfeldt?
Yes.
Yeah, at 185, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, again, it wasn't on my radar. It wasn't on my radar. That wasn't the reason why I was doing it, really. It was literally make money, cross train for wrestling. The goal was to eventually get in the UFC, but my thought was I wanted to do the Matt Hughes. Like, I want to take that Matt Hughes approach where he wrestled in junior college, then he wrestled Division I think at Northern Illinois or Eastern Illinois, and then he started Eastern Illinois, then he started fighting, right? So that was my thought. Okay, junior college first, go wrestle Division I, become an All-American. After that, go to fighting. So it was like on my radar after college. So I was just trying to stack wins, make money, and then, just hope for an opportunity. But the opportunity just wasn't on my radar then, because my plan was graduate college, become a Division I All-American like Matt Hughes, and then go dominate in the UFC like Matt Hughes.
Well, is that why you took 11 months off after that?
After
the
which
WFF
one?
fight.
I took 11 months off?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. So I didn't take it off. I didn't take it off. I had probably 4 fights pull out on me. Like Marlon Sims, I was supposed to fight in Atlantic City when I was I think it was like April, May of 2006. I was in Lock Haven. I went down there. We went to weigh-ins. I weighed in. He weighed in, and then the day of the fight, he pulled out. Didn't want to fight. Yeah, pulled out of the fight. He ended up going on the Ultimate Fighter TV show. Not too long after that, but yeah, no show. And Frankie Edgar was actually fighting on that card, so I got to see Frankie Edgar fight before he was Frankie Edgar. I remember him from wrestling at Clarion University in Pennsylvania, which they were a PSAC, but they were in the same conference as me at Lock Haven. And Frankie Edgar wrestled my roommate in college, and they had really good matches. So I knew who Frankie Edgar was, and I got to see him fight that night. And I was supposed to fight on that same card, but like I said, Marlon Sims pulled out. I was supposed to fight Upshur again. He wouldn't fight me. I had a bunch of guys just pull out. Like, I was too goddamn dangerous. Just too. I was submitting everybody. I was a Division I wrestler at that time, and I was like a national champ in boxing. So I was a very dangerous fight for guys that wanted to go to the UFC. So I understand them pulling out, especially like, you know, being more business focused. But for me, I wasn't thinking UFC for these fights. I was thinking stack my record, get wins, make some money. The UFC is going to come after I graduate.
Yeah, screwed up your summer job. That's what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Dude, I had to work for my parents. I was doing construction. My parents own a construction company. So that summer, because I wasn't able to get fights, I was like wheelbarrow concrete, digging ditches, plumbing pools, like doing all sorts of shit, trying to bend and tie in rebar. Like it was, I mean, I was doing hard work, and it's 120 degrees outside in Arizona. I definitely preferred the training for fighting over that shit.
Yeah, that's wild. So after 11 months, you finally get back into the ring of the cage. June 11, 2005. What's up, Miguel?
It's Rage in the Cage. I think
What
you've
did I
been
say?
saying ring. I think you're slipping.
Okay,
That's all.
probably.
Okay. Just clean it up a little bit. Just
I need a
clean up.
microdose. I need to eat my mushrooms. I haven't had it in a while.
That's it.
Adam Roland is your next opponent. Thank you, Miguel.
Yeah, I'm trying to the Adam Roland fight. I'm trying to remember that fight. I don't really remember too much from it. I think he was a wrestler. I think he was like a successful high school wrestler, maybe a state champion. I think I finished him pretty quickly. That fight doesn't like. It was a very quick. Like it wasn't. I think that was like a day of opponent too. I didn't know about anything about him. I think I showed up to like Rage in the Cage. They're like, hey, we got this guy for you. And then I ended up showing up. That was no longer the guy. And Rage in the Cage was having a hard time finding me opponents, man. Like they had a really hard time finding guys that would fight me. So this guy, Adam, like poor dude, that dude was just outgunned, man. He had no business being in there with me. And Roland just didn't care. But Roland wanted the money that I'd bring in, right? So they just needed to find somebody that would fight me. And yeah, that guy. That's why I don't remember it too much, because it wasn't something that I had to really get up for, right? Like no offense to Adam Roland, he just, you know, there's a difference between JV and varsity, right? Like, and he just wasn't there yet. He needed more time to get to where I was at, and yeah, he just wasn't there.
Like at that point, did you have awareness of other guys that were getting, or you know, there were pros in your area besides Drew as well? Like the Lally Brothers were there with their team. You know, in the neighboring states, you had, you know, you expand a little bit. There's Diego Sanchez.
Yeah.
You guys are starting to run into fight. Joe Stevenson down there. Well, what's your opinion? Where are you fitting in with those guys?
Yeah, I actually made my transition over to Arizona Combat Sports in 2004, right after my freshman year of college, because Drew would drive up from Tucson up to Phoenix, and he would train at Arizona Combat Sports. So he introduced me to the Lally Brothers and Gustavo Dantes. I immediately fell in love, and that ended up becoming my home for, I don't know, the next like 12 years. Until I opened up my own gym, but I would still go in there and train with them, get coached by them. And I also went to the lab, but yeah, Joe Riggs was a guy, big guy. I trained with him a little bit, but he was just so much bigger than me. And Joe was a really scary guy. Matt Lucas was another guy that I trained with. He was bigger than me, but he was a great workout partner. Edwin Deweese, we never trained together, but him and I grew up in the same neighborhood. He actually lived a block away from me, growing up, like throughout my childhood. He ended up fighting the UFC. So there were a lot of guys, and they kind of, Homer Moore was another guy. He wrestled at Apollo. Yeah. He wrestled at Apollo High School, state champ, wrestled at Phoenix College with one of my high school wrestling coaches was one of his Phoenix College coaches, Dave Severn, whose brother's Dan the Beast Severn. They all wrestled at ASU. But so like I had kind of seen the path. There were guys in Arizona that had made it to the UFC. Just my goals were a little bit different. I wanted to graduate college first. So that was just it.
At Arizona Combat Sports, that's like the era of like the Steinbeis brothers. like Tim Kennedy.
Yep, he came down from California.
Yeah, cool. That was definitely a solid team back then.
Dude, we were great, man. And then it just got better. Like, so 2004, 2005, 2006, the Steinbeis brothers were my training partners, which Steve, he absolutely terrified me. Steve was a great kickboxer. And I got to see him in a kickboxing fight just kick this dude's head off. It was wild. Like, Steve and Ray were both great. Ray Steinbeis was a state champion wrestler. He wrestled in the Marines. He was on the all-Marine team, and he was an undefeated amateur boxer. So I had great training partners there. And Ray Steinbeis, he was amazing. Then Tim Kennedy came down in like 2005, 2006. He came down, and then once he came down, we started getting like more of the ASU wrestlers, and that's when Ryan Bader, Cain Velasquez, CB Dalloway, Jesse Forbes. Then we had Aaron Simpson came along. Cain ended up going to AKA because they had all the bodies, and I think they paid him a lot of money to go out there. But Bader and all those other guys, we became the team. And then MTX Audio came and sponsored us. So then we could all train full time. So I was getting I think we were all getting like $1,500 a month, which was enough for us to survive on. And so we could just train full time and fight. And that team just took off, man. It was a great team to be a part of. And it sucks that it just fell apart because that's when I was at my best. When that team broke up, my career tanked. And it was because I lost that team. I lost that unit. I lost my training partners. I lost that schedule that we had. It sucked, dude. It really sucked because my career really took a shit after that. And I had a really hard time getting it back until 2012 when I made the change to start going to the lab. I started splitting my time 50-50. I was going 50% to Arizona Combat Sports and 50% to the lab. And the reason why that was, there's multiple reasons, but Gustavo Dantes and the Lally Brothers split apart. And then Gustavo Dantes stopped working with MMA fighters. He only wanted to focus on gi jiu-jitsu, which gi jiu-jitsu doesn't really help me that much for fighting. There's plenty of arguments that can be made about gi jiu-jitsu and how it does make you better, but for fighting, it did make a lot of sense. And so I ended up eating a little bit of crow, swallowing my pride, made the call to John Crouch and the guys over at the MMA Lab, and they welcomed me with open arms. And John Crouch, Ben Henderson, Tim Welch, Scott Holtzman, all the guys that were there, they played a really pivotal role in my life as well. I mean, that win with Edson Barbosa really catapulted me to a new level to where I have a career that I can really be proud of because of some of these wins that I was able to get. And a lot of these wins or a lot of these opportunities came from, people like the guys from the lab or even the Drew Fickett. Like a lot of these, my whole life experience, kind of all came to fruition. And then having those guys at the lab, they just took my career to a new level, man. So I'm really grateful for them.
Weird. You mentioned a lot of names. Like when you were talking about Arizona Combat Sports, one of the reasons that it had a dip, I believe it was Ryan Bader and CB Dalloway kind of had issues and they kind of split the team. Am I off on that?
Yeah, you are. It was, and I'm not sorry. I'm not trying to talk shit about or
no, I don't know.
Yeah. No, just to clarify, it was, I want to say this as delicately as possible without having this mistaken, but the loud difficult. They are they're very consumed by fear, and that fear kind of gets the best of them. They do a lot of negative. They're very negative. They have a lot of negative reinforcement, and so they weren't really good for you mentally. Their training was fucking great. They were great trainers. They were great technicians. They had good game plans. They made me the man I am. For sure, my career wouldn't have been shit without them. I give them all the credit, but I also think my career also went to shit because of them and their negativity. And they drove CB, Bader, and Jesse Forbes and Aaron Simpson away. They just drove them away with their negativity and shit. And it sucked because it impacted me. And I was those guys are big. They didn't invite me to go with them, which broke my fucking heart because I thought we were teammates and I thought we were brothers, and they didn't invite me to come with them. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm just gonna be loyal to the Lallies, and I stayed there. But yeah, losing that team hurt me, and it was because of the Lallies and their negativity. That's the reason why the guys left and started their own thing.
I'll tell you a side story, like as far a little bit that I know too. The Lallies, after those guys left, started drifting away. Like I think one of them went back to real estate and things like that, and they're no longer involved in the sport, and that's a shame because they were at one point, like he said. Yeah, what was the name of the sponsor you mentioned?
MTX.
We had MTX Audio. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's the same company, but at one point I was booking a lot of their fighters. I was matchmaking for them, and Todd asked for my address, and this was the only time I ever got anything super beneficial. I got FedEx or UPS 2 big 48-inch screen TVs that he was just giving me as a gift for like booking his guys.
Oh yeah, we had Soyo. They were a TV technology company first. Yeah, we had them first. That was was kind of like there's some stock scam involved with that shit.
But when you're talking about having a high level team around you, there's that kind of stuff where they're managing sponsors, they're managing taking care of people. That stuff is good to have going on around you. So, it's hard to keep going too. It does wear on you too. So my hat's off to him. I have a lot of respect for him from those days. And, they're Matt Hume students originally. So I
and Maurice Smith.
But Trevor, I think, fought in Abu Dhabi in the first one.
I think you're right. Yeah. Trevor was a good ankle lock, heel hook guy. Trevor and Todd come from money. Their parents own the largest fishing cannery in Alaska. So they have trust funds. They had money. So they were able to just invest in training in martial arts. They fell in love with it. And they got linked up with Matt Hume and Maurice Smith, and they're great coaches. But they were doing too much. We had them. They were our trainers, our managers, our agents. Like, you have to split up. But again, I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. But people need to stay in their lanes. They need to stay in lanes. Like, I'm not saying that people can't be diversified and have multiple skill sets, but I don't think it's and the saying goes, like, it's not good to have all your eggs in one basket, right? So I don't know how much money I missed out on, how many opportunities I missed out on by them, like, kind of managing my career. I think I could have made a lot more money had I not had them managing me, and had I not done the MTX Audio and Soyo thing. I think I could have made a lot more money. But yeah, man, it was a crazy time back then. It was a crazy time, but they're good guys. Todd, yeah, he stepped away. Trevor still owns Arizona Combat Sports. He still trains some fighters. I go in there every once in a while as do guest appearances. But yeah, he's they're still involved. Like, I saw Todd in the gym like a month ago. I was in there. I did a kickboxing class, and Todd came in, and I got to bullshit with him and give him all hugs. Like, everybody, we're all cool. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, I was kind of at my peak, and then like the whole team fell apart, and I think that really hurt my career.
Yeah.
You mentioned Gustavo Dantes. How good was he on the mat?
I mean, besides the fact that he lost to Eddie Bravo, he was a very talented jiu-jitsu guy. He was a brown belt world champion. I mean, and then he got his black belt. Like, he was one of the best in the world. Yeah, like, he was a very good jiu-jitsu guy. Every time I would roll with him, I mean, it was like I was caught in a spider web. He was very good, very technical. Didn't like getting hit, so he didn't have a very long MMA career. But he was tough, man. He's a great coach. He's very good for your mind. But that's also why he left, because of the negativity of the Lallies. He just had to separate himself from that. So, like, it just sucks, man. It just sucks. Like, they're kind of victims of their own kind of weird personalities. They're, like I said, they're just a lot of fear, man. A lot of fear.
Gustavo, for that Eddie Bravo fight, I think I think that weight cut to 145 killed him because he's really big, really long for that. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he walks around like 155, 160. I think, Eddie Bravo is just good, man. I mean, Eddie Bravo,
Yeah.
He didn't beat Hoyler. Who did he beat? Henzo or somebody? Who'd he beat? He beat one of the
Hoyler.
Gracies.
Yeah,
Hoyler. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was really good. His style was so different and unique. And a lot of like the traditional jiu-jitsu guys were shitting on him until he started catching them. And you learn more from a loss than you ever do from a win. So I think that opportunity from Gustavo to lose that match to Eddie Bravo, I think it really opened up his mind because we started doing a lot more. Well, I wasn't with Gustavo when he fought Eddie Bravo, but I noticed that he would incorporate a lot more flexibility type moves into his jiu-jitsu that I think was inspired by Eddie Bravo, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
You also brought in Ryan Diaz from Canada a few times, the national champion kickboxer.
Oh man, Ryan the Lion Diaz, he's the freaking best. God damn it, that guy is amazing. I love him. He is such a good dude. Oh yeah, he was probably the best Muay Thai coach I have ever been around, engaged with. He is freaking amazing. I love training with him. I love sparring with him. I loved it when he held pads for me. He was good for my mind. I would bring him out on fights because he was just such a good positive influence. I can't say enough great things about him. Before my Edson Barbosa fight, I went to Ryan Diaz's house in Las Vegas. He held pads for me. He had a sauna in his house, so I was cutting weight there. Like they would get me IV bags. Like, dude, he was such a great teammate. Oh yeah, dude, he changed a lot of our lives, man. Like him, like he made an impact not only on me but John Moraga. Like and then Benson Henderson, he made the move over to the lab, and he's partnered up with the guys at the lab. So like Scott Holtzman, Tim Welch. I mean, I would even say Sean O'Malley is benefited from him. Like a lot of guys have benefited from Ryan Diaz. He's just a good dude. He's a great technician. And honestly, like his fight career doesn't really showcase his true skill set because Ryan was a great guy. He was a technician, but Ryan didn't want to work as hard as all the other guys did. Like he wasn't the guy that was gonna get up at 5 a.m. and go run a mountain, right? That wasn't him. Like he would go hit pads and do his thing. He didn't do anything like really extra. So he was very technical, but when fights would go the distance and stuff, he would tend to fade, and that's where he would lose. But he's just great. And like I said, his record, his MMA record, that doesn't really fully encapsulate his true skill set, but he was great in the room.
He's a 135-pounder fighting 155-pounders back in the day too. You have a common opponent with him. Opponent with him, Hermes Franca. He lost the hook and shoot belt to Hermes, but he was a hook and shoot champion for. I believe that's the situation. So yeah, he's too small for Hermes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But that was his tale. Another guy who he probably influenced a lot that you didn't mention is Demetrius Johnson. Because they both come from up there and with Matt Hume and stuff like that. Ryan's another Matt Hume student. So I didn't know Ryan
trained with DJ.
Yeah, no, I'm assuming that they had to run across each other up under Hume's wing. That's all. I don't know that for sure.
Maybe. You guys know Pat Runez? Have you heard of that name, Pat Runez?
I'm not familiar.
So you remember Tachi Palace, the Tachi fights? So he won their 125-pound world title, and then he fought in Virginia. I forget the promotion. It was in Fairfax, Virginia. But he won their world title as well. I think he beat John Dotson for that world title. And Pat Runez is from that Pacific Northwest, that Seattle area. So when Pat Runez ended up, he was actually one of my students. Pat was a part of my amateur team when I was coaching amateur fighters at Arizona Combat Sports. He's part of the amateur team. Then he worked his way onto the pro team, won all these fights. and then he had to move for work back to Pacific Northwest, and he hooked up with Matt Hume and started training with DJ. And Pat Runez, I think, is probably one of the larger people or persons that made an impact on DJ's career. I would say that DJ can attribute a lot of his success to Pat Runez coming in and training with them. So yeah, I mean, that's another guy to kind of have on your radar. Pat Runez definitely helped out DJ. I don't know about Ryan Diaz and DJ, but Matt Hume and Maurice Smith, that legacy that's there, I mean, it's undeniable that he is one of the best coaches to ever coach MMA or mixed martial arts.
Let's take it to the other side of the country. What about Eddie Alvarez? Did you guys ever work out together?
No, man. And you guys kind of alluded to some names earlier, like with Joe Stevenson and what Diego Sanchez. Carlo Prater was on my radar back then. Carlos Condit was on my radar back then. I didn't really know anything about Eddie Alvarez. He hadn't really been on my radar. Jorge Masvidal was on my radar. Those were all guys I thought I was going to fight in other promotions eventually. All guys that I heard of. And this was at this time, I wasn't considering 155. This was before my UFC fight. I was a welterweight. I was fighting at 170. I walked around like 175, so I didn't really have to cut much weight. So I just thought, with my wrestling and my conditioning, even though that some of these guys would be bigger than me, that they would have a hard time with me. So I never really cut weight, but a lot of those guys were on my radar. It just never happened.
What about Amanda Nunes? Did you guys ever spar?
Did you not hear about this?
I have not, but I had heard that you guys
okay.
had some legendary sparring sessions.
Amanda hits like a man. Amanda's awesome. God damn, she's awesome. Yeah, I sparred with her a lot. Obviously I wasn't hitting her hard or whatever, but I would spar with her, and then I'd also kind of coach her in the middle of sparring, hey, because she would be a southpaw. I'm make sure you're beating my foot, set up that straight left. Obviously, she doesn't speak great English, but I would I would try to show her beat my foot, stay outside my foot, so you can set up your straight left or whatever. Yeah, we sparred a lot. She was awesome. She was a hard worker. I mean, she was 155 pounds. So she was a big girl. She hit like a man. And she was great, man. She was a great training partner. She always showed up. She was always there. I couldn't be more proud and happy for her success. I think if she were to see me, if we were to run into each other in person, I would be remiss if we wouldn't give each other a huge hug. And it would definitely be a great thing to see her in person for sure. I think for both of us.
Was this in Arizona?
No, this was back at AMA. This was at
okay.
Yeah, with Mike, I forget his last name, Constantino.
Okay.
You guys remember Mike Constantino? He was a manager, promoter, did a lot of stuff, but he was the owner of AMA, and he's the one that had brought in all these fighters.
Do you ever go to the local MMA shows in Arizona?
I've been. What was that? There was that one World Series of Fighting. I went to one of those fights. I think it was one of the last ones that Justin Gaethje had here. I'm trying to think, man. I haven't been to any recently. I have been to a few since I've retired. It's I'll only go if I know guys are fighting, or I'll go and support guys. But I've been out of the gym. I've been so out of just kind of the whole MMA community. I'm doing medical sales now, and I'm kind of going in more of a professional. More professional. I go to F45 for it as that's my new gym, and I'll supplement going into Arizona Combat Sports every once in a while to get some different workouts in. But yeah, I've kind of separated myself from the MMA, and I've just kind of more focused on my more professional career. So I'm not as involved, but there are still guys that I care about that I will go see, especially if it's local.
Did you ever work out with Anthony Birchak?
Oh, I fucking hate that piece of shit.
He
walked
wait,
on.
Stop. Why does everybody hate him?
Because he's a piece of shit. He's a liar. He acts like he's something better than he is. The guy fucking, dude, he's such a douche. And his wife's Mercedes is a douche too. They just think they're so much better than they really are. He's a fucking quitter. He acts like he's something more than that, but he's a quitter. He walked onto our college wrestling team. He made it like a month before he fucking quit. He couldn't handle it, couldn't handle the pace, couldn't handle the workout. And he talked so much shit that people just didn't like him because he would talk so much shit, but then he couldn't back it up. He would just get his ass kicked in the room. So no one liked him. I never liked him. He's just not a good person. I don't know what he's doing. Like maybe I know he's got a gym, and so maybe he's helping people out, but he's still a douchebag. I don't like him, and I really just don't like his wife either. He sucks.
Were you at the Chris Carriaso's amateur show when Chris's wife punched him and he called the cops?
No, but I wish. I love Chris Carriaso, man. He's a great dude. Chris is a good old Tucson boy, man. And George Roop is another good Tucson boy. Yeah, that had some success in the UFC. Carriaso and Roop are great Tucson guys, but there's a reason why they're not friends with Anthony Birchak.
Right. So you hit King of the Cage. You get a no contest with Tony Lamas for legal strike. You take another 6 months off, dude, and then you're back with Roland again against Leonard Wilson. You know, another kind of stay busy fight. You finally get the call to the UFC. How did you receive it? When did it happen?
Yeah, that's a good story. So I got the call. I think it was like beginning of August of 2006. Beginning of August 2006. I was actually starting to pack up to drive back to Pennsylvania for wrestling season, and my Trevor Lally called me and was like, "Hey, do you want to fight in the UFC in 3 weeks?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, Hermes Franca's opponent pulled out. I think he's supposed to fight Spencer Fisher, maybe. Somebody got hurt and pulled out, and they need a last minute replacement. And if you're ready, if you want it, like we'll give it to you," because they had heard about me. The Skipper Kelp, who's friends with Dana White, Skipper Kelp was the head boxing coach at UNLV when I was at Lock Haven. And so Skipper Kelp got this.
He booked Roy Nelson. He booked like a bunch of MMA guys too. But like he goes back to the old days. He was Tito's boxing coach back in the day too.
Yeah.
And he was a member of the national team, the National Olympic team. Like, I don't know if he went to the Olympics, but he was a national, like he knows Mike Tyson. He knows those guys from amateur boxing career. So Skip Kelp is the real deal. I'm sorry to jump in, but yeah, just so people know.
No, he was legit. I attribute my left hook to Skipper Kelp. He's not the one that taught it to me, but he's the one that worked on the Lally Brothers left hook. I did train with Skipper Kelp. I did go to his gym and train. But my left hook to the body, my left hook up top, like putting those punches together, I give a lot of my credit to Skipper Kelp and his legacy for helping me develop that. But yeah, he was great. So he was the coach over at UNLV. He saw me win my national title in boxing. He had no idea that I was a wrestler, but Skipper Kelp was good friends with the Lally Brothers. The Lally Brothers trained with Skipper Kelp and Tito and Chuck when all those guys were in Vegas. Who are some of those other? God dang it, I'm forgetting some names. The guy that got flatlined by GSP. He's like a light-skinned black guy. He's doing like movies now. He fought GSP. Got knocked out. Jay Huron. So Jay Huron was there. So a lot of guys like, and the Lallies were kind of a part of that group that trained there in Vegas. So somehow Skipper and the Lallies, like the Val Lallies, like told Skipper about me, and Skipper like saw my boxing or whatever. So Skipper had talked to Dana or somebody, told them about me, and that's how the Lallies got the call from the UFC, was through Skipper Kelp. And then I was packing up, getting ready to go to college, and I got that call, and that was my dream. Like my dream was to fight in the UFC. Obviously, I thought I would wait till after college, but it was a good opportunity. It was Hermes Franca. That was a fight I thought I could win. I thought that was like a pretty easy fight, actually. So I took it, and I called my wrestling coach back in Lock Haven. I told him that like I got this great opportunity. He knew that I was an MMA fighter. He knew that was my job in the off season. And so I called him and told him that like, hey, I'm gonna take this opportunity. And I also called my boxing coach from Lock Haven, let him know that I got this opportunity, that I was gonna take it. And yeah, the rest was just history, man. I started training. It was my first time ever cutting down to 155. I hadn't weighed under 160 pounds since high school. I wrestled 152s in high school, but I wrestled 165s in college because I walked around like 175, and you had to do hydration tests and all these, and you had to do a hydration and body fat test. So you couldn't drop massive amounts of weight like you could back in the day, especially with same day weigh-ins. So I wrestled 165, boxed 165. So I was like trying to focus, like I'd never cut that much weight. So like it was really just about trying to get my weight down the 2 weeks I had to prepare before that fight. But it was it was like kind of like it was like a whirlwind. It happened so fast. It's like I got the call, I called all my coaches, I unpacked my shit, and I just started training. I just started training on I had to figure out how to lose a bunch of weight in 2 weeks. So yeah, it was just a wild
experience. Were you done with college? Were you done with college at that point?
No, I was going into my senior year. I was just a junior. So I was going into my senior year. I dropped out. Yeah, I didn't go back and actually finish my degree until 2016, 2017. I did one semester at Seton Hall. I absolutely hated New Jersey. The training partners were shit at AMA. I just didn't like New Jersey as a whole. It just the town, the state sucks, the roads suck, the traffic sucks, the people aren't nice. Like and I don't know, the sun never shines, so that place sucks. So I came back home, fought for a few years, and after I retired, I owned a gym for a couple of years. When I sold my gym, I was able to walk away with enough money to where I could put myself back through college. I only had a year and a half. I had a year, like a little over a year left. So I did summer school, then two full semesters, full time, full loads, and I graduated in April of 2017.
Wow.
Hermes Franca. So here you are heading in the UFC. You're going to drop out of college and chase your dream here. How much were you getting paid?
$3,000 a show, $3,000 a win to fight a guy that was ranked 5th in the world.
Yeah. So you're still a little bit of a positive thinker.
Dude, the UFC is just an opportunity. That's it. That's all it is. It's just an opportunity. And they never loved me as much as I loved them. The sport didn't love me as much as I loved it. I never got paid what I should have been paid. I was always overlooked, underappreciated. But except for when I fought, like what I made more money losing than I ever did winning. But they knew that they could call me and I'd fight anybody and I would make it a fight. Every single one of my losses, I would say 80% of my losses were fights I took on short notice. You take out those short notice fights.
Let's talk Hermes Franca. 5th in the world. Savage. I mean, everybody's talking about him. You beat him from pillar to post, except for the last minute of the fight.
I gassed myself out. Yeah, I gassed myself out. The moment was too big for me. I'm walking to the octagon and I see Tim Duncan, and I'm like, oh, what the fuck? Like, this is real. Like, the lights are on. I'm in the cage, and I just blanked out, dude. I completely blacked out that whole fight. I don't remember anything from that fight. I was so just caught up in the moment. I just relied on my wrestling, dude. I don't even think I fucking tried boxing him, and I could have beat the brakes off him boxing, but it was very surreal. The moment was too big. I was 21 years old, and I just was not prepared for that. And I beat the brakes off that guy, and then he goes and knocks out Spencer Fisher. And then his next fight is Sean Shirk, and that easily could have been me, dude. That easily could have been me. I was way better boxer than Spencer Fisher. I was obviously a better wrestler than both those fuckers. And so I feel like I would have flatlined Spencer. And then Sean Shirk, he's juiced out of his mind. He probably would have beat me, but he couldn't have beat me naturally. You get him off the juice, I would have fucked him up too. But yeah, he was just roided out to the gills. So I would have lost that fight, but I would have definitely been a decent money maker. I would have had more money had I beat Hermes. Had I beat Hermes, I would have been. I think my career would have been a lot different. But whatever, I'm happy.
Dude,
like I said, it was an opportunity.
You were right there. You were right.
I know.
Like Miguel and I, we studied, like, for years. We've studied the independent grind. Like, this isn't like, oh, I'm just reading a record and going through it. For 20 years, Miguel and I have been talking about the independent grind. And at this point, we're like, man, that's a live dog, but Hermes Franca is Hermes Franca. And when you showed the level difference between the two of you, minus the 1 minute of the fight, dude, we're like, that guy's gonna be a world champion. He just needs just the opportunity.
I think I had like 21 takedowns in that fight or something. I had something absurd. There was like a absurd amount of takedowns. I don't know if it was 20, but there was an absurd amount of takedowns in that fight. And Big John McCarthy kept standing us up, that motherfucker. Like, so if he would have let me just kind of do my thing on the ground a little bit longer, I think I would have had the condition to make it through. Yeah, but he kept standing us up. He stood us up so goddamn quickly, which, good for him. But like, I'm watching some of these fights now, and I'm just like, even with the recent lightweight title fight, Oliveira, I mean, I felt like that fight could have gotten stood up a couple times, but they didn't. They let them work. So, things are a little bit different now than they were back then. But ultimately that loss catapulted me into becoming a world champion. So, I mean, it's,
dude, it put everybody on notice. Put everybody on notice.
They've got this crazy little kid, from nowhere, 21 years old, little wrestler, boxer. You got to watch out for him.
Yeah, yeah. You also had a training partner, Sam Young, that had passed away way too young, as a heart attack.
Ooh, yeah, man. If you're really trying to get me going now. He died in my arms, bro.
Yeah,
we sparred. I was training for Gleason T-Bow. Gleason was a southpaw, and Sam was a southpaw. And as far as training goes, I would be like the man in the middle, and they would bring like a fresh guy in on me every round, right?
Shark
and
Tank.
Shark Tank. And I would do 4 or 5 5-minute rounds with a fresh guy every round. And Sam would come in and give me some smoke, from that, give me that southpaw look, that boxer look. Like, he wasn't a great wrestler or anything, but he would come in there and he would just go hard. And he was somebody I could always fucking count on, dude. Even before he like joined our gym, like, I could count on him to be there. And I had just finished the round, and I said something to him, like, we were joking, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, you're next, or something, like, yeah, because he had a fight coming up. I'm like, oh, like, he's like, great rounds. I'm like, yeah, buddy, you're next, get in there, because he had to go do his man in the middle. And so he did a couple rounds, and when I was cleaning up, finishing up, and then him and one of our boxing coaches that would come in, Kelly, Coach Kelly, I forget his last name, but Coach Kelly, he would come in, and him and Sam went into the ring, and they were going to go just do a light round boxing, just like touching, going to work on a couple things that Coach Kelly saw in the MMA, in the octagon at Arizona Combat Sport. He just wanted to work with them on a couple things. So they're just going to do a couple rounds. And I actually walked over, hit the timer to get going, get the round going. And I start walking towards the locker room because I was done. I was done training. They were working. I already said all my goodbyes. And I start walking to the locker room, and I just hear a crash. Just someone fell down in the ring, and I hear Kelly like, "Yo, what's going on? Hey, Sam, get up!" Oh. And so I go over there, and he's not breathing. He's unconscious, but he has a pulse. And so I run to the front desk, and luckily we had a member that was a paramedic that was actually working the front desk for us that night, just randomly. Like this guy, like he was just a member, but he was working the front desk because he's family friends with the Lallies, and he was just helping out for that day. And he came back, and we started doing. I called 911. He ran back, started doing CPR. I called 911 right away, and I was holding him, and we were switching off doing CPR, and I was holding his hand, and I was just there like, come on, Sam. And the ambulance came, like, dude, it seemed like just like a minute, 2 minutes. They were there so fucking quickly. And they got him going. They started started hooking up the pads, the defibrillators pads to him. And they were like doing the oxygen thing, and they were like trying, but like I don't think he had a pulse anymore. And they were trying to get him going. And I got a call from his wife like 10 minutes later that he was dead.
Oh my God.
And he had a daughter. He had just had a baby girl, and he had like another daughter that was fuck, man, she was just like a couple years old, man. And they'll never know how great their fucking dad was. And it's a shame, man. It's really sad. But that guy died in my arms after sparring with me. He came in there for me that night. That was the only reason why he was there, was for me to give me rounds. So he could have been spending that time with his family. What happened was going to happen either way. Like, he had a congenital like heart defect. The lining of his walls were really thin. So
matter of time.
Yeah, it was going to happen. It was going to happen anyways. But that was the most fucked up thing that's ever happened in my life, seeing somebody die and having somebody die in my arms. And I was able to raise some money for him and his family. I had to go fight fucking Gleason T-Bow like a couple weeks later, dude, and I wasn't me. I wasn't me. And,
that's a heavy weight. That's a heavy weight to carry into a fight.
I was never the same, dude. I was never all I did was lose after that, man. I was never the same. Like that fucked me up for so long. Just wondering, like, when is it going to be my time? You know, and could I be in this? Like, I could be fucking sparring, the next thing you know, dead. I was never the same after that. And yeah, man, that was fucking probably the most, that like by far the most tragic thing that's ever happened to me, by far.
No, that's very strong stuff. Now, why, I hate to turn it right back around to business, but why, you're an established fighter at this point. I know, you're going back to UFC or whatever, but why didn't you just tell him, look, I'm going to take a knee on this one? You know what I mean? Why would you not take a break for yourself? You seem like a thoughtful person too. Like, that had to cross your mind.
Hey, you're like a decent human being. Yeah, right.
Dude, the UFC did not fucking like me, bro. They, Sean, Joe Silva, if I didn't take that fight with Gleason T-Bow or stay in it, then he told me that he was going to sit me for 6 months minimum. He wouldn't know when another opportunity would come for at least 6 to 8 months. So they would just hold these fights over you, man. Like, I was forced into fights. Like, if I didn't take the Abel Trujillo fight, I was going to sit out for a long time. If I didn't take the Joe Lozon fight, I didn't know when I'd fight again. Like, they would just like pressure me, man. They would just pressure me into these fights. And I'm like, well, fuck, I know I can beat these guys. I know I can beat them. Like, I'm better. Like, Joe Lozon fucking sucks, dude. Like, I know he's got a good record, but I beat the brakes off that dude. Like, he got one opportunity where he ended up like getting me to the ground and got my back. He couldn't do shit. Like, he couldn't do shit. He wasn't better than me at boxing. He wasn't better than me at wrestling. And like, he won that fight because I fucking gassed out because I had a 2-week training camp. Like, I had to go from 185 pounds to 155 in 17 days. Like, fuck, dude. Like, no one can do that healthy and then expect to perform at a high level against a top 10 guy. And yeah, but if I didn't take these fights, they would always threaten to shelf me. And like, the contract they gave me was absolute fucking shit. 10-10 to fight Edson Barbosa, 12-12 to fight to fight Joe Lozon, 12-12 to fight Melvin Gillard. All those guys were making 2 to 4 times more than me. So Edson Barbosa was making like 24 or 26 and 26. I was making 10 and 10. Joe Lozon was making like 40 and 40. I was making 12 and 12.
Ugh.
Melvin Gillard was making 46 and 46. I was making 12 and 12. And then when it came time to renegotiate, they bumped me up to 15 and 15. I'm like, well, I beat Melvin Gillard, who's making 46 and 46. You know, I was beating the shit out of Lozon, and with a real training camp, you know I'd beat him. I'm on the same level as these guys. I should be getting 40 and 40 minimum. Nope. You don't like it? Sit for 2 years and wait for your contract to expire.
Was this when Ken Pavia was managing you?
Ken Pavia never managed me. That was Mike Constantino was managing me during that time.
Yeah, no, the UFC's a wall. We have a lot of stories, very similar. A guy that you think, wow, they had to take care of that guy. Stefan Bonner said the same thing when his famous UFC contract, the one you win from the Ultimate Fighter was up. They offered him $3,000 more on the tip end. You know what I mean? It's like they've been consistently, I don't know.
Here, Miguel, let me wrap it up with what you're saying. In 2014, the first time we ever hear about a fighters union is out of Jamie's mouth.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was a fucking world champion, and I was making less than guys that never even been top 5. I was making less than guys that never even gotten close to a world title. And I had all these fucking fight of the nights. I had all these great performances against tough dudes. Yet they just knew that they could take advantage of me, man. And my management was fucking weak. They were chicken-hearted cowards, and they really didn't fight for me. They cared more so about their relationship with the UFC than they did with their fighters, and actually caring about the best interests of their fighters. And it was like, take it or leave it. And they would only renegotiate. They would renegotiate right before your last fight. So then they would do that strategically. So that way, if you didn't accept their contract, they would sit you out, or they would put you against an absolute fucking hammer to try and get you to go out on a loss, so you couldn't go get some money from another company, which we saw with Nate Diaz. They tried doing that to Nate. It's their MO, man. They're fucking assholes and they're terrible fucking business people, but I understand it, but they give us an opportunity. So it's like, it's a deal with the devil when you're working with the UFC.
Jesus. Yeah. Was it LG Sports Marketing? Is that who you were with?
LG, I think that was Jason. Yeah, that was Lally and Janae. That was 2000. Okay. That was 2006 to about 2010. My fight with Benson was my last fight under them.
So, but you worked out with Benson for a while before you guys fought. Was it kind of a forced issue?
I beat the shit out of Ben. Ben and Efren Escudero would do round robins on me, and I wouldn't lose a round. I would do 5-6 rounds in a row with both of them round robbing on me, and they wouldn't win a round. I think the only round I ever lost to Ben was the second or third round of that fight with him. That was the only round I ever lost to Ben, sparring or anything. Great training partner, good athlete, but I was just I was better. And I don't know, man.
Mike, I'm going to do something a little unusual here. I'm going to knock us back a little bit, see if I can get us back on track, because we talked extensively about the Hermes Franca loss, and then you got a call back to the UFC coming off a loss, which was so right around here you're pretty good. But then
Miguel, there's 7 months. There's 7 months in between.
Right, but they bring him back. But my question is how do you go from the UFC to the WEC? Like, what was that conversation? How will you transition there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the UFC had just acquired all those organizations, right? Pride, WFA, WEC. They bought those organizations for their contracts. So what had happened was they had a deal with Comcast and Versus. So what they did was they consolidated all the big time guys, all the heavier weights into the UFC, and then they created the WC to be centered around more lightweights.
Yeah.
So what the conversation was, because I beat Jason Gilliam, I fought Jason Gilliam for 3-3. After I beat him, my contract went up to 5-5. So whoever I was gonna fight next was gonna be for 5-5. They acquired the WEC and they contacted me. They contacted the Lallies and like, hey, we want to really build up the WEC. We like Jamie. He's young. I was 22 at the time. We'll guarantee him all his fights on TV. We'll give him a pay bump. They gave me a $5,000 bonus and they bumped me up to 7-7. And if he wins his first fight, we'll get him a title shot. So it was kind of like a no-brainer, right? I was going to make more money. I was guaranteed to be on TV. It wasn't the UFC, but you know, at that time, like I wanted the money. It was an opportunity to become a world champion. And yeah, like that's why I took it. And ultimately, the WEC guys ended up being the better fighters, anyways, because when they merged us over, Ben Henderson immediately became a world champion. Then after that, I mean, you know, Anthony Pettis, then Ben Henderson, like. No, those guys ended up dominating. And it was like the WEC guys that just dominated the UFC. So the WEC was much more competitive, I think, in the lightweight division. You had, you know,
sure.
BJ Penn, you had Sean Strickland, you had your couple outliers, but for the most part, the WEC was a much more competitive lightweight division.
Okay. So you beat a guy coming off the Tap Out reality show in Sherron Leggett, one of Dave Strasser's guys. You knock him out in 408. Sherron Leggett is a very gritty, hard fighter. And that finish in the first round, like here in the Midwest, I was getting phone calls like, dude, first round finish against a guy that, you know, we figured you'd beat him, but a finish and beating somebody are two completely different things.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was really good then. Like that was when I was like really kind of coming into my own, coming to my peak. That's what our team had just been formed. So I had a really good like schedule routine as far as training. I had amazing coaching. I had Division I All-Americans as my training partners, as well as my coaches. Then I had world champion jiu-jitsu coach doing all my grappling, doing all my jiu-jitsu. And I had a lot of high-level jiu-jitsu competitors, Steve Rosenberg. A lot of these guys are Jacob McClintock. A lot of these guys are high-level world Pan American champions in jiu-jitsu. So I had them to work out with. And then I had the Steinbeis brothers and like pro boxers, pro kickboxers that would come in and work out with me. Ryan Diaz, like I had a lot of opportunity. So we created this amazing team. And so like, unfortunately, like I was just fucking good. I mean, I had the right coaching. I had the right people around me to make me better that were good for my mind. Like having Bader and Simpson and Gustavo and Ryan Diaz and some of these guys like around, like they were able to counterbalance the negativity from the Lallies. So I was just feeling good about myself. I was very confident going to fights. Obviously, I would be scared to lose, get scared. I'd be scared to get embarrassed. You know, like that fear of failure was always there, but that fear of failure also is what motivated me. But that Sherron Leggett fight, man, dude, I was very confident I was going to smoke that dude. And I was just on a different level, man. And I like his best thing was wrestling. I knew that I was a better wrestler. No one really had seen my striking. And I didn't really get a chance to showcase it there, but I kicked him in the head. I was just a better wrestler, and he wasn't ready for the smoke.
Well,
he also accumulated, I think, a 10 or 12 fight record under the name of Rob Roy before I think Sherdog cleaned that up and combined them. But he had an alternate ego that also fought on Smoker Show.
Oh man!
But look, here's the thing: you walk into a title fight against an elite striker in Rob McCullough in the WEC, February 13th, 2008, and you were such an underdog that most betting parlors would not take action on it.
Really?
Yes.
Damn, I'd never heard that. That's the first time hearing that.
Dude, you were a heavy
15
underdog.
years.
You didn't know you were underdog going into that fight?
I mean, I knew I was an under. I was an underdog in most of my fights. I think
Most of your fights.
Yeah. I mean, well, he was a world champion. He just knocked out. Who did he just knock out? He just knocked out somebody really tough. Friend. One of her. Yeah. He just knocked him out. And like, dude, that guy was really tough. He was one of Hermes Franca's guys. What was his last name again? Crunklin?
Razor Rod McCullough.
No. I know. Crunklin?
Yeah, Rich Crunkleton. Yeah.
Crunkleton. Yeah. He was a nice guy too, man. He was great. I saw him around the WC a lot, but yeah, I mean, going into that fight with Razor was pretty contentious, right? He's got that Huntington Beach bad boy fucking team punishment. Yeah, and he's got that look, and he's a handsome dude, tatted up, dating all the porn stars, and like knocking people out. And I was a big fan of the team punishment guys back in the day. Tito Ortiz, Tiki, Razor Rob, back when they were fighting in King of the Cage, and some of those other organizations. I used to get a bunch of the King of the Cage like VHS tapes, and I'd watch them. I would just study film. I was pretty obsessed with MMA, so I'd watch a lot of them. And so those guys, I was fans of those guys. So it's like I went from, I was 22 years old. I think 22, 23 years old going into that fight, and I was fighting a guy that I looked up to like earlier in my career. But one of the most beautiful things that kind of came out of that fight is fighting Razor Rob forced me to stand up. He was so good at wall walking and like defense, like getting up from the ground and wrestling defense. That first round, I took him down a few times, and I about gassed myself out. I remember I went into the corner after that first round, and I just had my arms are on my knees, my head is down. And my coach goes, Lally, Trevor, one of the most beautiful moments, man. I still remember this. He goes head to head with me, and he's really calmly said, "Hey, Jamie, we got to box him. We got to box him. We can't take him down anymore. We got to box him. You have to box him. Just trust your striking. You can do this. You got to box him." And sure enough, dude, I went out there that second round, and I started hitting him. And I was like putting combinations together, and I was seeing his punches, and I was slipping and moving. I'm like, holy shit, I can do this. And then we go into the third round, and I was able to I was so dejected, broken. Like I was really fucking tired after that first round. And then I went through that second round, and the striking pace is so much different than the wrestling pace. And it was a lot more efficient. Like I wasn't burning as many calories or as much energy. So I after that second round, I went back to my corner, and I was like a lot more refreshed. So going into that third round, like it was almost like I had a round off, because again, like not doing all the wrestling and the scrambling and having to pick them up and all this stuff, like I'm just throwing punches and moving. And then the third round, like I put a cross together, and it was lights out. And then after that fight, I was like, I'm good. I can stand up with these guys now. I believed in myself. I didn't have belief in my striking before that fight because I never really had to. I was never forced to use it. I could always out wrestle people. But that fight, he forced me to stand up. And that was a pivotal point in my life and my career where I'm like, now I'm a dual threat or the triple threat. We get to the ground. I can submit you there. I can out wrestle most guys. And then now striking, now I'm knocking people out striking. I'm beating professional kickboxers at striking. Like now I think that's what put people on notice for sure, was the way I beat him.
Well, McCullough too, it was like in that second round, he's like, what is this? Wait, I didn't prepare for this. It was, you saw his frustration. Yeah. Like, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
Yeah, you adjusted, yeah. He didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, well, he didn't he really didn't have to, right? Like I went right into his game, right? His ideally for him was to strike, right? Mm-hmm. That would be ideal. What wasn't ideal was being on his back, getting mauled by me. And he trained well to not have that happen. I just don't think people realize my athleticism or my striking ability because they've never seen it.
Underestimated.
Yeah, no one ever seen it, dude. There wasn't tape of me There was zero tape of me out there going to war with people on the feet. So there was nothing. They had nothing to prepare for striking wise.
Now, how you mentioned obviously that you didn't feel a lot of love for the UFC, and at this point some of that came later, but did you feel love from the WEC now? You got success. They're kind of
Reed Harris.
You're looking like a poster boy kind of guy. Like, did you ever feel that from them?
Uriah Faber was the poster boy. They shit on me too. That no fear energy, dude. I was racing motocross, like riding dirt bikes, like doing all sorts of fucking crazy shit back then. And they just every single promotional dollar, every single opportunity that the WEC got, whether it was Bud Light or Amp Energy or No Fear, everything went to Uriah. Everything went through Uriah or Miguel Torres for they were really making a push for the Latin fighters with Bud Light. So like the Latin guys got the Bud Light money, and Uriah Faber got all the No Fear or Amp Energy money. They didn't do fucking shit for me. Didn't do shit. After I beat the fight after McCullough.
Cowboy.
No.
Oh, here you got Marcus Hicks.
Yeah, Marcus Hicks. Yeah, so
Okay.
the Marcus Hicks fight. After that fight, so I just demolished that dude. Like he was like finishing everybody.
Dude, wait, hold up, Jamie. Dude, Marcus Hicks is a stud stand-up guy, and your footwork. Whew. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest you watch that fight. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. Like he was very tough. He was a pro boxer. He used to be a heavyweight, I think. He was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He if you got a hold of your neck or your leg, you're either getting guillotined or you're getting an ankle lock, or he would knock you out on the feet. Like he was a very scary opponent.
Yeah.
And he was a southpaw. I had to beat his foot. And one thing I learned, and I learned it by accident. One of my training partners were working on just like setting up the kick to the body, my left kick to the body, my 10, my right leg, and just setting it up off the lead hand, slapping, faking a jab, slapping that lead hand, kicking, and I hit him with a body. I got him with a body kick, and that crippled him. He could not take a body. Marcus Hicks could not take a body shot. And so after I hit him with that, I need him a couple times, and then it was all she wrote. But after that fight, Reed Harris comes into the ring. You're a fucking badass, man. You're fucking badass. You're so great. You're so tough. Then when it came to the contract negotiation, I'm still making half as much as Uriah Faber. Like,
it's terrible.
Fuck those motherfuckers, man. After I beat Razor Rob, I made 9-9 to fight Razor Rob. I think they bumped me up to 15-15 after that. So after beating Razor Rob, I went to 17-17. I fought Marcus Hicks for 17-17. Uriah Faber made, I think he was like 40-40, 36-30.
Yeah, he was
36-30. Yeah. So
plus sponsors though, like he was Monster Energy drink. He was everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. He got sponsor money that the WEC was getting. Like, so the WEC had a choice to give money to other people. They only gave it to him.
And Marcus Hicks, for the record, he fought his last career fight. He took Kamaru Usman the distance, 10 minutes, the full fight. So you finished him in 2 minutes, and Kamaru Usman went the distance with him. So,
damn, guys, you guys really did some research. Shit.
The thing about you, the thing is, if people don't know you come across. Is he confident or is he overconfident? I'm just making it clear that you're not overconfident, that this is well-placed confidence that you have in your skills, because you were totally in the conversation.
Underappreciated. You were underappreciated. Yes. Yeah.
For sure. But I mean, like, again, looking back on it now, I'm 38 years old. It's like, it was such a great opportunity though. Like, every job I've had, and I'm working for an amazing company now. They pay, like, the money I'm making now is way more money than I ever made fighting. But because of my history with the UFC and WEC and these fights that I've had, these doors have been opened for me that otherwise wouldn't have been open. So you know what? Like maybe all my money and all that credit, or all that value that I thought I brought in the beginning, maybe it's just backloaded, man. Maybe it's just how life works. Like maybe in the beginning it was more of a struggle, but through without struggle there can be no progress, right? So I think everything in my life is more so backloaded than it was up front.
Oh, before we end with Donald Cerrone, speaking of research, Pima Community College, you wrestled there. Did you ever get in a fist fight with Sunnyside head coach Tony Leon?
I slapped him once. He says I punched him. I slapped him. And I was completely wrong. And coach sent me home from practice, and I apologized to him. He still says I punched him. If I would have punched him, he would have went to sleep. I slapped him. I was being a little bitch. I was a little bitch in the wrestling room. I think he took me down or something. I got upset, and I think he called me a bitch. He's like, "Stop being a bitch." I went, "Damn, there's a bitch for you." And yeah. Oh, but Tony's a great guy, and then that impact that Tony is making over at Sunnyside, and yes, the lives that he's changing for some of those young men and women, dude, he is the impact that he is making in that community is like you can't calculate it. And I would be surprised if when he passes away in when he's 105 years old or whatever, I bet you the funeral procession will probably be 10 miles long for him. That's the impact that guy makes. So
that's what everybody says. Behind that guy's back, they're just saying, we can't believe how much he's giving back to the community. And whatever issue you guys had, that's wrestling. That is what it is.
How old were you when that happened? You were young, right? Can we blame Drew Fickett for this? We can blame Drew Fickett then, right?
We can blame Drew. Drew was his private coach growing up. So Drew and I had that connection. But Anthony, he was my sophomore year at Pima. He was my main drill partner. He was my best friend, my drill partner. Like when lovers quarrel, right? Like when you're doing all this shit. Yeah, you're doing all this shit, like tempers, whatever, egos. Yeah. But he was a major part of my success. And we went to the Cal Poly Open, and he dislocated his elbow, and I was bawling right by his side, like, because I knew his season was over, and I lost my training partner, and it really sucked, dude. It really set me back not having Tony Leon as a training partner. Luckily, there were a couple guys. There was a guy from Wabanzi Community College out in Illinois. Mark Vajovic, he came out to Pima, and he was a high level grappler. He came out and trained with me. He was a good partner. Then Travis DeGrout, he was a professional MMA fighter out of New Mexico and state champion out of New Mexico. He actually came in the second semester to help train with me and be a drill partner. So I mean, Anthony had some really big shoes to fill, and my coach was awesome. He was able to find a couple guys, luckily, that could come in and help drill with me, that could keep up a little bit. But losing Anthony was huge, and that situation in the wrestling room was really unfortunate. But I love that guy. Yeah, I love him, and we moved on past it. But I wish I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Well, let's close with Donald Cerrone. You get 5 months in between fights, January 25th, 2009. Cowboy, a lot of trash talk pre-fight. Once again, you came in as an underdog.
Yeah. I mean, he had a lot of hype coming off of that Tap Out show, right? And dude, he was a badass kickboxer, right? Professional kickboxer.
Yep.
And he was a jiu-jitsu guy that could submit people. He had the gimmick, right? The cowboy hat and the song and all the shit. Like he was dialed in, and that was a tough fight. Donald by far is the toughest guy I've ever fought. I broke my hand, I broke my foot, I got a lesion in my right eye. I was pissing, like my piss was like dark brown after that fight. I spent I don't know 6 hours in the hospital to get like try to squeeze the bone. So my here was right where this knuckle is. So this metacarpal was sticking straight up. And so, yeah, my whole hand, this whole top part of my hand was backward. The whole thing got like back. It was crazy. So they had to reset it, cast me up. Then my left foot was broke because I broke my right hand in the first round. I missed his head and I hit the mat, and I just felt something in my hand, like something wasn't right. But I was able to, I still kept punching with it because I was like, I guess my body was in shock, or, the adrenaline, whatever. I didn't really notice it until like the second round. And then like, it really started hurting in the third round. So I had to kind of change up my game plan. That's when I started like throwing kicks and stuff. And I kicked him in the head with my left foot, and I broke my left foot. I broke 2 of the metacarpals on my left foot on his head. And yeah, then like the last round of the fight, it was like, fuck, I got to wrestle this guy. I had a broken hand. I had a broken foot. I'm like, I got one more round, and he was taking every shot I threw at him, man. I was hitting him so fucking hard. Hindsight being 2020, he can't take a body shot. I never once went to the body. I wanted to knock his ass out. But again, hindsight being 2020, if I could do it all over again, even the second fight all over again, I'd just go to the body. Like I'd go to the body on that guy. I think that's what really hurt him. And I'm surprised more people didn't go after his body once they saw what Anthony Pettis did to him. And I think somebody else kicked him in the body, and he just crumbled. So yeah. Anyways, he's tough, dude. Great guy. We're friends. We've made our peace, and on Instagram, I'll comment on some of his shit. He'll comment back. So yeah, we're cool now. And I'd love to grab a beer with that guy someday, just kind of talk about what the fuck was going through his mind. Why didn't you like me?
Yeah,
whatever.
It was funny, after you beat him, you said, "Yeah, man, I'd like to publicly apologize for the pre-fight, trash talk." And then you said, I don't like him as a person, but as a fighter, I really respect him.
No, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's a good dude, man. And like, he's a fighter's fighter. That guy is a Hall of Famer. He's a legend. I'm really happy for him that he's 2 beautiful boys, right? 2 kids, one. I know what Danger or something is one of them. He looks like he's in great shape. I just saw he posted a video on Instagram recently. He looks about 185, jack. He's doing all these movies. I saw him in the list on the last episode of the Terminal List. That car, the JR series. Are you guys familiar with that on Amazon?
I've seen it. You're better to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in that, and he's doing movies and shit now. I'm really happy for that guy. I was curious. I was really worried, to be honest with you. Not to like say I'm above him or anything, but I was like really worried. Like, what does this guy have without fighting? Like, he's not obviously not the most articulate, most intelligent. And clearly he wasn't business savvy with the tax trouble that he got in, never paying his taxes. So I was worried, like, what the fuck is this guy going to do with his life after fighting? And I'm just really happy that he's got his ranch, he's got his people, he's playing the role as a mentor to fighters, but then also he's doing movies. And I'm really happy for that guy, because like I said, I was worried. I was like, and I feel like that worry is probably, you guys could probably agree with that worry. Like, yeah. Can you see Donald Cerrone going and, I don't know, running a gym? Can you see him going and doing medical sales? Can you see him as a, like, I couldn't, because I just didn't know if he was capable of that stuff. But yeah, man, he's found his thing, he's found his groove, and I'm really, really proud of him.
Did you ever make up with Brian Caraway? I know you guys had a rivalry for a minute.
He's a douchebag too. Him and Misha Tate, both. I hate Misha too. Misha's a scumbag. Misha is such a shitty human. I don't know why people like her. And Brian's a douchebag too. They came and trained with us over at the lab. And John Crouch, I mean, you should talk to John Crouch about Misha Tate and Brian Caraway. They were the most disrespectful motherfuckers on the planet. That's why, like, anytime I see shit with Misha on it, I will go out of my way to make sure that she knows that I know what a piece of shit she is. Brian and a couple of the other guys, Mike Chiesa, what was the bald guy that's Sam something or other, Sam that hangs out with Chiesa. He fought the UFC, bald guy. He's friends with Mike Chiesa. They trained together in the Pacific Northwest. you guys definitely fought in the UFC.
I'll look him
anyways,
up. Keep going. I'll look him up.
Yeah, he's Mike Chiesa is one of Mike Chiesa's training partners. I think he fights a 45 bald guy. Anyways, doesn't matter. So Brian Caraway and Misha Tate, like during like the class, like when John Crouch would be teaching technique, they would just go and do their own thing. Like they wouldn't pay attention. They wouldn't like do anything that we were doing. They would just go and do their own thing. It was just so goddamn disrespectful. And like John Crouch would be coaching and teaching stuff. They'd be talking and doing their own thing. They wouldn't spar with certain people. They wouldn't do anything that all of us were doing. And then when it came time to like get cornered and pay, she didn't pay John Crouch what she owed him. She's just a shitty fucking human, dude. So disrespectful. Oh man, yeah. And Brian Caraway, they're birds of the same feather. They're just shitty humans. Them, Birchak, they all got a special place in fucking hell because they suck.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. Fickett told us Varner's gonna be a good interview, bro. He's gonna be good. He recommended you, and he also recommended Seth the Polish Pistola. Yeah.
Seth is a funny fucker. Did he give you guys some good anecdotes and funny stories and weird quips that he has? Yeah, yes. He's fucking funny. Yeah.
I got your little fist fight in junior college from Drew.
What about George Root? Have you guys talked to him at all?
Not yet. No, he's on our short list though. He's supposed to be real good.
I would love to talk to that guy. That'd be great.
George, he's got a very unique story. He's very successful right now. He got into the medical marijuana. And so I think he's doing dispensaries or grow houses. But talk about a guy that was a grinder. Like he didn't have a lot of opportunity. He was somebody that was never really appreciated, but he beat some big names. I think he'd be a great interview. And I respect that guy so much. He's just such a good dude. I think he would be a great interview. And then if you guys ever get a chance, there was Jesse Moreng. Jesse Moreng has a very interesting story. The guy that I lost to. I mean, he fought in the WEC. I know he's not the biggest name you guys have ever heard of or whatever, but he's got a pretty good story. He was a business owner, a dad, doing all these things, but yet fighting at such an elite level. So yeah, I don't know, just a couple guys for your radar.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, Jamie, I'm gonna be in touch to get a hold of George Root for sure.
Okay, do it, man. Do it. He's on Instagram.
Pleasure. Took us a minute to pull this thing together. You came through, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right, guys. Have a great day, and thank you.
Michael, another deep dive. I think Chris is going to be proud of us. Keeping it going here. And Jamie Varner's in the books.
Man, what a fantastic interview. Huh?
Yeah, the guys, I leave these interviews really happy when I get a guy like him that has moved on and seems to be in another phase of his life where he's happy and stuff. He's still obviously on top of the game with martial art. He's a martial artist and stuff. But like he said, he's working, he's content, and it doesn't look like a tragic ending. And he's a guy that, was always the B-side, maybe with some A-side. Maybe at some point he had A-side talent. And he was always the B-side, so the guy could have been bitter and left the sport with some bitterness, and he didn't have that. It's interesting. A lot of these younger guys, everybody's younger than me now, but these younger guys have managed to get good perspectives on their careers. Like I didn't make Chuck Liddell money or anything like that. I'm sure a lot of them think that they should have. They deserve more. There's lawsuits that say they deserve more, right? So there's room for bitterness, and these guys aren't bitter. They moved Joe Stevenson, Ian McCall, Jamie Varner is another one of those guys, just positive, moved on, didn't really want to dwell on much negative stuff like that, but still gave a great interview. Look, and Jamie, with respect, brother, thank you, for from the heart. We had him crying at some point, and I got a checklist. Jamie, you ain't the first one, you ain't gonna be the last one. So thank you, man. Thanks for a good interview.
Yeah, we obviously we talk about tragedies in the ring, occasionally when they come up. but there's also tragedies in the gym that mostly go unnoticed or untalked about, like we did with Semi Schilt, before his historic, K1, before his historic K1 run. And I shouldn't say before, it was during it, with one of his training partners dying in his arms. And, we had another one. And it's pretty important to me that those guys get at least a little shine or what they deserve. And, if it means just a little 2 or 3 minutes on this podcast, well, it's mission accomplished in my opinion.
Yeah. And we try to be classy about these things. And I like to bring it up in this way. I hate to be vulgar about it, but if that stuff comes up live, like, hey, the guy's going into a fight, but like he's got a training partner that passed away, or he's got family issues or anything like that, all that affects betting and lines and things like that. All that's information that's out there. So these guys try to keep that hidden and you never know. You know what I mean? And someone like with that type of baggage shouldn't be asked to fight. That's just, they need some time to assimilate things. And Jamie didn't get that respect, and that's really unfair.
Well, let's compound it. Like, that's just one aspect of it. There's fighters that go into bouts completely injured. You talked about betting lines. They go in completely injured because if they have to take a year off, they're screwed. They got no money in the bank. Like that UFC check, even if it's just show money, is something that carries them for the year or 6, 7, 8 months. And if they're at the end of the money that they had on their last fight and they're going in with a foot injury, they've got no choice but to fight her, because insurance isn't going to cover it. So it's either career-ending injury or they have to go in with it. And, like you said, this isn't a physical injury, but it is a mental one. And, it still bothers them today. So it tells you how serious it was.
The thing is, we have a tendency, and this is something for, the sport to take notice to. A broken leg is obvious, but we ignore a damaged, cerebrum, brain, mind, whatever it is. We ignore that. We tend to even give people a little leeway. Oh, it's like, he's had a lot of fights. He's still doing good. He's fine for a lot of fights. It's like, man, you see signs of people, suffering CTE and mental, declines from this sport too. And, to be honest with you, Jamie was really together. He's still a young man. He's still got it all together. So I'm not even sure how we wound up on that end of the subject, except for that the UFC is not paying their guys enough and that people are worrying about it, about their health and stuff, and willing to commit fraud. Because that's, at the end of the day, I think that's legally how that could play out is if you sign a contract without the intent to fulfill it somehow, then, and that's in the neighborhood that they're in, then they should be questioning some of their pay scale. They're really aloof when it comes. And then when you, like you said, when CTE comes into mind, the UFC doesn't even, bring that subject up.
No. So Miguel, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening right here, we need you to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. If you don't, you are a POS, I think is what the 3 letters are. We need you to do that. It helps us grow. Miguel, any shout outs you want to give? I think Fred Hammer definitely deserves one.
Obviously, Fred is a longtime fan of the podcast, but he stepped up and he actually did some work and did us a favor, cranked out a couple of T-shirts. We got a couple of T-shirts in the mail. If they're not in the mail yet or you haven't gotten them, you should be getting them sometime here. We got Crowbar, we got Genghis Conrad, we got our usual suspects that we always thank. Crowbar, we're working on different sizes, so you're on the next list of T-shirts. But other than that, Freddie got us a couple of T-shirts that we'll be able to get out there. So some of the hardcore guys, email us your addresses and stuff, and we'll make Mike package some things.
I'll handle it. Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, well, not ladies, because I don't think we've got a single female listener. Gentlemen, please do us a favor, like, share, subscribe. It only helps us. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, we see a big bump like in Toronto. We've got a bunch of people in Toronto listening now. Like, it actually took over our #1 city. They passed Australia. I mean, they came out of nowhere. So I think we've got, you know, about a half dozen more fans there. Greatly, greatly appreciated.
And another thing we busted out recently, actually, is shorts. So now on our YouTube channel, we got like 1-minute clips. And I don't know if everybody, you know, if every single interview is for everybody, but it's a real good way to get like a 1-minute listen to a bunch of our older interviews and stuff, and, you know, get involved in some of the stories and see if you go out there and listen to some of them, because I think that the shorts have had their impact. Like we put up a short from our recent Pedro Sauer interview where he talked about Eric Paulson, and Mike calls me up. He goes, "What'd you do?" Eric Paulson, you know, got some absurd number of downloads in one day. Like, you know, his podcast is older, so we don't usually see that, but it helps it out. It helps us spread them, you know, share the shorts and stuff like that. That'd be fantastic. Yeah. We'd like to break through with those. I see those are the high traffic ones, and we haven't had one break 1,000 hits yet. So I'd like to see us hit 1,000 on some of them first, and then go from there. So
yeah, so Miguel,
everybody out there.
Wait, also, I think we're going to be combining our YouTube channels. We've got a clips channel and a long form channel. I think we're going to go all long form channel, maybe just 2 clips, you know, like 3 to 5 minute clips per episode along with shorts. And we're going to put everything there, including the ADCC stuff. You know, we've got a lights out. What is it? The conspiracy, like MMA conspiracy hour. That's with Todd Adkins. It's a completely separate channel. If you're looking for like topical MMA stuff, we usually hit home runs there all day long. So we got a lot going on, but we're gonna kind of get a little slim on YouTube and keep it to one area rather than 2.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.